Good to have you here. It's July 18th, 2026. Today's profile: a policy that did the opposite of what its designers intended. On the evening of December 31st, 1999, teams at the Federal Aviation Administration's command center in Herndon, Virginia, watched clocks roll past midnight while planes continued to land without incident. Engineers who had spent the previous 2 years rewriting date fields in air traffic software now sat in front of screens that showed no cascading failures. The absence of disaster felt, to many watching at home, like proof that the danger had been invented. The two-digit year convention began in the late 1950s and early 1960s, when computer memory and storage were measured in kilobytes rather than gigabytes. At that point, a single kilobyte of core memory could cost hundreds of dollars, and magnetic tape reels had to be purchased, stored, and physically mounted for every additional character of data. Programmers working with COBOL and Fortran on systems for banks, utilities, and government agencies therefore chose to record years as 65 instead of 1965, simply to conserve expensive magnetic tape and core memory. They were shaving 2 characters from every date field across millions of records. When you multiply that saving by the number of transactions a utility or bank processed each day, the reduction in tape purchases and memory purchases became a concrete line item on the budget. At the time, the programs were expected to run for perhaps a decade. Few imagined the same code bases would still handle Social Security payments and airline reservations in 1999. The decision was therefore a straightforward engineering trade-off made by rational people operating under the constraints they faced. By the mid-1990s, awareness had spread. Canadian consultant Peter D. Jager published widely circulated articles in 1993 urging organizations to begin audits. In 1998, the United States Congress passed the Year 2000 Information and Readiness Disclosure Act to encourage companies to share repair information without fear of lawsuits. Banks, electric utilities, and defense contractors created internal Y2K offices that reviewed millions of lines of legacy code. The U.S. federal government alone reported spending roughly $8.5 billion on remediation between 1996 and 2000. Proponents such as John Koskinen, chair of the President's Council on Year 2000 Conversion, held weekly televised briefings describing progress. Skeptics, including some members of Congress and financial columnists, argued that the scale of the effort already proved the problem had been exaggerated. When January 1st, 2000 arrived, the predicted meltdowns did not materialize. A handful of documented glitches occurred. An incorrect date stamp appeared on a Japanese weather satellite. A brief malfunction hit a Swedish railway ticket machine. Several U.S. library systems misfiled 100-year-old records. None produced the widespread outages that had been feared. Because the most severe failures had been prevented by the very repairs that were now invisible, the public had no dramatic before and after contrast to observe. Media coverage quickly shifted from "will the lights stay on" to "was any of this necessary?" Estimates of global remediation costs, which ranged from $300 billion to $600 billion depending on the study, were now cited as evidence of waste rather than of successful risk reduction. The prevention paradox took hold. The more thorough the fix, the more completely the original hazard disappeared from view, leaving only the expenditure as a visible trace. Over the following years, this pattern colored reactions to later warnings about infrastructure and cybersecurity. Decision-makers who had lived through Y2000 sometimes discounted new alerts precisely because the last one had ended quietly. No formal reversal of the remediation work occurred. The repaired code simply remained in place. Some organizations did reduce future IT budgets after concluding that expert forecasts had been alarmist. Data on the exact scale of those cuts remain anecdotal. The episode also left a lasting imprint on how large-scale technical risks are communicated. Subsequent government and industry reports on potential digital failures began to emphasize visible metrics and tabletop exercises so that successful prevention would leave clearer evidence behind. when the cost of prevention is large and the benefit is the continued absence of failure. Organizations should document averted incidents with the same rigor they apply to actual losses. Complex legacy systems reward incremental, well-funded maintenance more than dramatic last-minute campaigns. Yet the political and budgetary rewards tend to flow to the latter. The Y2000 experience therefore invites a practical question for any present-day infrastructure decision. How will we recognize success if the most likely outcome is that nothing noticeable happens? And that's where today's story leaves us. If it changed how you see one everyday decision, that's the whole point. Pass it along to someone who'd appreciate it, and we'll be back tomorrow with another case. And if you'd rather watch than listen, find us on YouTube at NARA Network. Links in the show notes. This show comes to you from the NARA Network. If you want another sharp daily briefing, Modern Investing Techniques has you covered. Modern strategies for Canadian and U.S. investors. All our shows are free at naranetwork.com. The Do Positive Pod is the club for people who do something about it. Episodes and the dispatch wall at naranetwork.com/thedppod. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.